How's everybody this morning? Welcome to WACO. And I'm not talking about Waco, Texas. Very good. Now's the time in the program for announcements and introductions. Anybody new in the room who'd like to introduce themselves? Oh, yes, we have the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Fissler reminding me up there. Thank you, Mr. Fissler. I'll ask Mr. Kidman. Mr. Kidman, would you please lead us in the pledge?
Thank you. Place your hands over your heart. Veterans may render a hand salute and join with me. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Understand there's one man in the room who has a birthday this morning. Would that gentleman please stand up? Please join me as we all give Bob a big hand. Happy birthday, Bob. We just completed the latest electoral cycle, and for those who participated, and I would say congratulations to all. It is the free exchange of ideas is one of the things that America makes great, and to all of those who participated is a life-changing event for everyone, and it is an important part of the process. Congratulations to all of you who take part in our representative republic. We all have a responsibility as citizens to stand up for what we believe in, and it is the opposing ideas that sharpen the focus and bring into clarity those issues which are important to all of us. So congratulations to everyone. This morning, we have a Metropolitan report by Linda Ackerman. Is Linda in the room, or is there some other member of Metropolitan going to give us a report? Well, I'm not seeing one, so we'll pass on to Larry. Is Larry here? Larry, there you are. Would you like to fill us in, sir?
The highlight of the morning, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Mr. Dick.
Thank you. Most of you already know that in recent developments in Orange County, we have been aided in our delegation's presence by the appointment of Larry McKinney. In case I have failed, or if Linda has failed to advise you, we have also been bolstered by the appointment of Don Calkins as an Orange County delegate member, inasmuch as he has been appointed by the city of Anaheim to take the slot previously held by Chris Murray. We're delighted to have Mr. Calkins on the team because he is a steady voice. He's a trained engineer. He knows the systems. He knows the organization. He's been running the water utility under the direction of others in the city of Anaheim for a number of years. I really, truly look forward to his presence on that board. Just as the MODOC board looks forward to the presence of another water maven, if you will, in the guise of an unassuming, quiet Saddleby joining us. Not a lot's going on right now because so much has been happening every place else. The water bond has been taking up a lot of the air out of the room. The primary goal, in my perspective, as we move forward in the next couple of months, will be addressing the fact that we haven't got a heck of a lot of water. You all know where we are in the water position. You've got the water report. You don't need me to bring that to your attention. The thing we're going to be wrestling with, of course, is going to be what do we do next? The allocation programs that will be developed as so well spoken by our chair. We're going to have differing points of view, and the conversation will be focused, and I think at times will be sharp. Obviously, what you see depends a lot on where you sit. We're blessed with having an aquifer, so we certainly think we need to find a way to take advantage of that opportunity to help put storage into that, take it out at the times of need. If you don't have an aquifer, replenishment water doesn't seem to be real high on your list. If you're San Diego and you've been spending a lot of money through the years, I can remember just a few years ago, San Diego County Water Authority had a bigger capital improvement budget than Metropolitan. Metropolitan serves 19 million people, has couple of thousand employees, and there's San Diego, about the same size as Orange County, spending more money. But they don't have an aquifer. They recognize the fact that they're kind of at the end of the pipeline. So they've now got some reservoirs built. So what's the difference between a reservoir above ground and a reservoir beneath the ground? Well, you all have been around long enough to know that there's a lot of differences. Some of them we can be resolved, some that we will resolve, some that may not be resolved. Don't mean to take up your entire morning, sir. As an update, we're delighted with the delegation we're currently fielding. Expect to get a lot of heavy lifting done by Mr. Calkins and by Mr. McKinney. But the primary focus the next couple of months is going to be allocations. Whether or not you like it, whether or not you think it's appropriate, I believe that allocations are coming down the road. I believe that ultimately the retail agencies or cities are going to be forced with the distasteful task of raising prices in order to actually reduce usage. We all know that we can ask for some cooperation and you're going to get it. We all know we can ask more loudly for cooperation and you're going to get a little more. But ultimately, the price elasticity on water is amazing. I can remember doing budgets in my own little business years ago, and I was sitting there and planning that maybe gasoline will go up to $1.25. Well, I found out, and I said, if it goes to $1.50, what am I going to do? Well, I found out you cope with it. Water is much the same. We may have to rely on that as our big stick and then work with carrots for other things for conservation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Larry. And a distasteful task indeed that will be. Mr. Swan. Yes, sir. The Association of California Water Agencies.
First of all, it passed. And, you know, a lot of hard work up and down the state by lots of organizations, all of you in the room. But now we have $7.1 billion in new money to spend on water projects. It's the largest amount of money that water agencies have gotten that they can spend since probably the Burns-Porter Act, adjusted for inflation. So now the responsibility is on all of us to spend it wisely. Historically, you know, the people in Orange County have spent money wisely. They've invested in things, not only the groundwater, developing the groundwater, retreating wastewater, whether it's in the the drinking water quality level or if it was in the subpotable level. We built storage reservoirs. So we're coming through this drought better because we invested more wisely than other people in the state, and so we were better prepared. So the onus on us in the future is not just to do pet projects, but to work together to do projects that make sense, and we can demonstrate to the voters that we spent the money that they lent us wisely. So, and if we don't do that, shame on us, and we will long-term be held accountable for that. So I hope that we all work together to spend that money. Region 8, 9, and 10 had a conference 2 weeks ago, and we had several highlights in there, but one of the most interesting one for those who did not attend was a fellow from UC Riverside who came and has actually done polling data showing, and research showing what kind of conservation, projects work and which ones don't work the way we think it is, because the human behavior is in there. And most of his presentation should be up on the Aqua website now, but hopefully we'll be able to get him as a speaker down here. The results of his polling data and his research were quite amazing, and what works and what does not work. So when we're developing more conservation programs, which Orange County is way far in the lead on, we ought to pay particular attention to what really works based on human behavior and how humans deal with the devices that we give them and the money that we pay them. I want to make sure everyone realizes that the first week in December is the Aqua fall conference. It happens right before winter. I think of December almost as winter, but it will be in San Diego. I encourage you all to go. We're going to have a really good conference down there, and I hope you're all there in the audience, paying attention to it. So thank you very much.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Art Kidman. For 40 years, I have been the legal counsel for the Yorba Linda Water District. I requested of Chairman Duane that I have the privilege to introduce our speaker this morning, and let me explain why. 6 years ago next week, we had a serious fire that occurred in Orange County, one of the worst that we've had, although the loss of structures wasn't as extreme as it has been in some other instances. This fire came on in one day and burned over 100 in Yorba Linda, and some other communities nearby also experienced delays. So this ends up being a tale of 3 tragedies, the first being the fire itself. 6 months after the fire, claims started to come in against the Yorba Linda Water District. 6 months, of course, they were all denied. 6 months after that, then in 2009, the lawsuits started to come. And then another 6 months after that, the court proceeding was getting organized, and the parts of the case that had to do with negligence and that sort of thing were kicked out. But the idea of inverse condemnation survived. And at that point in time, in the summer of 2010, this community joined with the Yorba Linda Water District and the Aqua JPIA in attempting to appeal, do an interim appeal of those decisions, and we got letters of support from agencies all over the county. Most of you provided support, asking the courts to take that case so that there was a chance to turn around a clearly incorrect decision. But they didn't take it, and so then at that point in time, the only choice left was to fight on and go to appeal to actually overturn this decision relative to inverse condemnation liability from failure to protect against the common enemy. 1 year after that, the third tragedy occurred. That tragedy was that the Aqua JPIA had expended the first level of insurance that's provided, that is the pooled portion of the insurance available to the Yorba Linda Water District was exhausted. And at a very critical juncture when there was a settlement conference, the excess carriers, we had stacked insurance, that is the JPIA was providing to the Yorba Linda Water District and all of you who are members, excess insurance up to a grand total of $60 million. Those insurers, particularly the lead one that had the bottom tranche, wait a minute, there's no coverage for inverse condemnation, and refused to help. Ladies and gentlemen, at that point in time, I was advised to advise my client that their life was in jeopardy. The life of the Yorba Linda Water District was in jeopardy because the potential liability out of that case was huge. And that what was essentially said is that the water district needed to think about bankruptcy, getting positioned to be able to. What happened, and this is the punchline of all of this, is that the Aqua JPIA stepped up and took the back, guarded the back of the Yorba Linda Water District, meaning that all of the agencies that are members also had our back. And we were able to work out the arrangements of how we were going to defend the case, and eventually the case at the the fire case was settled, and then the fight went on against the excess carriers that had refused to participate, and literally, by refusing to participate, forced the water district into a settlement that was, one thing, we wanted to make sure it didn't become precedential. So, sorry for taking the speaker's time with that background, but I want to say the Aqua JPIA is wonderful, wonderful insurance. Everyone who is members of the Aqua JPIA, the JPIA has your back. Those that don't, I hope you have insurance that's as good. That's all I can say. I'm going to introduce Andy Sells. It's my pleasure to introduce Andy Sells. He's the Executive Director of the Association of California Water Agencies Joint Powers Authority. He's been part of the JPIA family for more than 20 years, and I think you're going to have a very interesting talk from Andy. Thank you.
Well, good morning, and that's certainly the best introduction I've ever had, huh? And for those of you that aren't part of the JPIA, I bet you're wondering why not, huh? I am Andy Sells with the Aqua Joint Powers Assurance Authority. I've got a presentation today, and it's very interactive. If you have questions, if you have ideas, thoughts, I would encourage you to share them, ask them. We don't have to wait till the end. I'm going to touch on several different things, kind of what I think are issues to you as water agencies, to you as issues as public entities in the state of California, and to you as just citizens going forward, looking out for yourself and your employees. With that said, this is our 35th year. Our first policy year began in 1979, and we're now starting our 35th policy year. It started in the liability program. To celebrate that at conference, for those of you members of the JPIA, we are having our first ever breakfast on Monday morning. I would encourage you to come to that. It's just let us know that you're coming so that it is an RSVP so we know how much to get, but should be interesting. We have a good speaker lined up for that. I'll give you a little bit of background, and then we'll start talking about some of the issues today. Aqua JPI, we basically have 4 main pooled programs. And when I say pooled programs, these are programs that basically are self-insured programs. You, the member agencies of the water districts around the state of California, are not bound by insurance law here. You're bound by contract law. You're in contract with the other, in the case of the liability program, the other 290 plus members there. The nice thing is we're not insurance, so we can't be sued for bad faith, for instance. And in my case, I don't have to fill out that annual report of about 6,800 pages, it seems like. So that's a good thing. But each of these programs are pooled programs. In other words, there's a portion shared by all of the members that participate, and then we buy, as Art referenced, excess insurance on top of that. The liability program, as Art mentioned, has $60 million worth of limits. There are no deductibles in the program. Currently, at the time of that loss, we had $1 million retention. We have now stepped that up. So what does a $2 million retention mean? That's what we share. That's what all of you are sharing with the person next to you. The first $2 million of each loss is shared by the 290 members in that program. Anything after that then goes to excess insurance. Hopefully we don't have to sue them to get them to do it, but generally it goes through excess insurance. The property program is what we call first-party losses. So the liability program, third-party losses, somebody sues you. You have a pipe break, one of your district employees gets in an accident, maybe you have an employment practice claim, somebody sues you, that's where that liability program comes in. Each of these programs are voluntary. So a district may choose to be in liability and maybe not property and workers' comp, or vice versa. Maybe they're only in property, not liability and workers' comp. The majority of our members participate in all 4 programs. So the property program is what we call first person. That's like our homeowners, your vehicles, your buildings, your pumps, your equipment, your assets that you're insuring. That's the property program. The workers' compensation program covers our employees. And then as of July 2012, we took over the employee benefits portion of this. So prior to 2012, through Aqua, there was a second JPIA. They were called the Health Benefit Authority. And that authority had been in existence for probably 3 or 4 years. The health benefit program, well in existence before that. That program was struggling to get its feet underneath them, and so they were all bundled into one and moved over to the WACO JPIA, my program, and my workload went up a little bit. Who knew this Affordable Care Act thing would have some impact here? And we'll get to that. So I'm going to talk to you about a couple of hot topics these days in the risk management. And I think this will apply to all of us because we're all seeing the same things here. One of it will touch a little bit about what Art was talking about as well. And what is that hot topic? Age. And age in a different way than you may think. There's the obvious. And it's an issue for all of us, and it's that aging workforce. You know, for most of us, probably the majority of our skill positions in our organizations are most likely filled by baby boomers. And baby boomers are retiring. We all know that. Some of us earlier, some of us later. But there's this industrial knowledge that has been built over the last 10, 15, 20, sometimes 30 years plus, and those people are retiring. That's an issue for us in our organizations. How do we retain that corporate knowledge, that industrial knowledge? How do we transfer that to the people coming up behind? That's going to be an issue for all of us, and it's accelerating for us very rapidly here. It's also going to carry over into the recruitment and the retention of that. How are we going to go out and find the next 2 generations behind the baby boomers, the Gen X and the Gen Ys, aren't even the size of the baby boom generation. We have to wait till the millennials until we get another generation of that size. So what does that mean? That talent that we use, it's going to be harder to come by. It's going to be harder to recruit, and you're going to have to retain it. So all of us work hard at developing our employees and our staffs. We hope that the college and the industry is also pushing people up here. But that retention is going to be critical. There will be competition for those skilled players. There will be competition for those trained, highly compensated people. We're going to have to adjust for that. We're going to have to adjust for that in our budgets. We're going to have to adjust for that in our thinking. We're going to have to adjust for that in how do we get this younger generation, these millennials, a very sharp group, very dedicated, but they're still quite young. How are we going to get them? So that's an interesting part of risk management, because that is enterprise risk management. How do we ensure that our enterprises go forward well and effectively? And it's going to be through that recruitment, that training, and that retention of those employees. And I'll talk a little bit about the retention a little later. When I talk about age, we have a second part about aging. That's our aging infrastructure. And I think the perfect example was what happened there at LA Water and Power here just above Pauley Pavilion, about a month ago? I think we lost about 30 million gallons of water at that point there. That was a 100-year-old pipe that broke. On the risk management blogs, the first thing everybody goes is a picture of, that's a cast iron pipe riveted together. That can't be less than 100 years old. Well, it turned out that pipe was put in the ground in, 1903, I think they said. But the other issue behind that, and I'm sure you must know, but if not, I will tell you, they went to shut that water off. They couldn't. The valve was frozen. They couldn't shut that water off. So it just kept flowing. They didn't know where the next valve was. Took them another 3 hours to find the next valve before they can shut that water off. So at the JPIA, we're out promoting our commitment to excellence. One of the things that we promote regularly in this infrastructure is exercising your valves. It seems so common, so easy, but here was LA Water and Power, they weren't exercising their valves. So that's an issue for us. Replacing that infrastructure is going to be an issue for all of us. It's an issue for me. As an insurance person, my fear, and probably many of you remember, 10, 15 years ago, Rainbow Water District in San Diego County. They would have a no-growth board, so they wouldn't replace anything, and then a new board would come in that would be very proactive, and they wanted to update their infrastructure, but they needed a new general manager, so they fired the old one, and then another board would come in, and they're not going to do anything, and they need a new general manager, and that just kept going. But what it became apparent to us as staff and to the committee members that we looked at, you then became their maintenance program. If they're not going to replace that infrastructure and fix it when it breaks, who's paying for that? You and you, and you, everybody in this room, because we all share in those. And that's what we saw happening for there. So we're very aware of those type of situations. We follow that at the JPIA. But that's part of that infrastructure. I'm going to take that a little further. This is the dictionary's description of inverse condemnation. And so you've heard about it. Art talked about it earlier. It was a great segue for me. I didn't have to pay him much money to do that. But property damage, or inverse condemnation, is very real. It is when property is damaged. In essence, somebody's property is damaged either through the facility that the government operates, your pipelines, your infrastructure, or some actions of theirs that was causing that, and they didn't get compensated for it. So their property is in essence damaged. A pipe break is a perfect example. Pipe breaks, it's part of the infrastructure, it floods somebody's home, their home or their business is flooded, they've incurred damage there, they're going to allege inverse in there. Inverse is a real issue. I would tell you I'm seeing more and more claims that allege inverse. And the real question is why? Why inverse? Well, it doesn't fit, or they're going to allege both. They're going to allege a dangerous condition of public property and inverse. Well, the real thing about inverse at the bottom there, if the plaintiff, the person suing you, is successful in that, they get to collect their attorney's fees. So why wouldn't an attorney allege that right up front then? And then let the courts decide if there's inverse or not. So you're going to see that more and more. For those of you in the JPIA, not an issue to us. We have inverse. It goes to our full $60 million worth of limits. If you're not with the JPIA, all I would say to you is make sure you have that inverse coverage. It's growing more and more. And what a private insurance carrier will do, they're required to provide you insurance. If, let's say, a simple suit, you've got a $500,000 loss, they're going to allege two allegations. Dangerous condition of public property and inverse. Well, what the insurance company is going to say is, okay, I'll cover half of your suit. We got a duty to defend, but I only have to defend you for half of that. We cover the dangerous condition. We don't cover inverse. So that's the real issue there. If it gets bifurcated like that, now you have to come up and start defending part of that claim. It may ultimately settle out before that, but that brings you up on the hook right away. So that's why inverse is important. It's being alleged a lot because the plaintiff's attorney can collect their fees in that. Kind of a unique thing. We see inverse, as Art mentioned, in the Yorba Linda fire situation. We see inverse, as many of you are aware, of the pipe leaks. We have these pinhole leaks happening throughout the county here in some of the pipe, and they're trying to allege it's the water district's water that's causing these pinhole leaks. Yes, we're involved in that. Yes, many of us are fighting that, but it's still alleged. It still has to be defended, and we're moving forward on it. Another example of where you can see inverse condemnation. So I'm going to change gears on you now. This is the other new hat I wear. We're talking about health benefits. And I'm going to talk about a few things that I think are important to you because you're going to have to deal with these issues here in the next few years. The first one I'm going to talk about is the Cadillac tax. What is the Cadillac tax? Basically, it's a 40% tax on any portion of your premiums over a set amount. So the current set amount for an individual employee right now, $10,200. Currently, roughly in our program, in this area, that's in our PPO, the most popular program, that's about $8,400, $8,500. If that number grows 5% a year, health insurance generally is growing at a faster rate than that. At 5% a year, that will hit that Cadillac tax threshold in 2019. If it grows 7% a year, it'll hit it in 2018. For a family, $27,500, we're currently at $23,10, same thing. 5% a year, we hit it pretty soon, shortly after 2018. At 7% a year, we will be at that level. So what does that mean? Somebody has to pay that tax. That's been undecided at this point. It's part of the Affordable Care Act. Guess who gets to make the decision on how that's collected? The IRS. So we won't know until December of 2017 for sure. But the question is it the employee who gets these funds? Do they have to pay that excise tax, that 40%, anything over that? Keep in mind, if we're only $1,000 over, that's a $400 tax bill. Does it fall to you as the district? Well, that $400 tax bill times how many employees you have, that just added to your health care costs dramatically. I can't tell you how that is ultimately going to come down. We have just finished one congressional election. We have a presidential election coming up before 2018 and another congressional election before that time. But I will tell you that the Affordable Care Act has signed up a little over 6.4, almost 6.5 million people now get insurance in this country as a result of the Affordable Care Act. 90% of them are being subsidized by us, by those that have these plans, by those that pay taxes, those that earn wages. 90% of them are being subsidized. That's, 6.2 million. They expect to enroll another 4 million before we get to 2018. That's 10 million people enrolled. If 90% of them are being subsidized, that's 9 million people. That has to be paid for. That's a commitment that has been made that has to be paid for. Whether we call it a Cadillac tax or an excise tax or an increase in our income tax, those funds have to be generated. If we go forward, they have to be generated. So how this Cadillac tax is going to come down, I can't tell you exactly, but I can tell you that they're expecting to get that money. This thing was being anticipated to be funded by a big chunk of this Cadillac tax. So how does that impact you? Well, remember when I talked about our aging workforce and that retirement and that recruitment and that retention? Health benefits is a big deal to us in this society now. We're seeing a fundamental shift in the way this country looks at health benefits. I would bet you my parents, back in the 50s and 60s, whether you worked for the federal government or Lockheed or Aerojet, you probably had health insurance, and they probably didn't even think about it. It was you when you went to look for a job, you were interested in what the salary was. Everybody got health benefits. But that's not the case today. If any one of us went out into the market looking around for a job these days, the health benefit portion that the employer is willing to pay is a big deal to us because it's very expensive. We're paying $23,000 a year for each family that you have covered in this program. That's your cost. For each one of your employees that's a family in your organization, you're paying $23,000 a year or some portion of that. It's a big deal, and going forward, it will be a big deal. I'm going to talk about how we're going to look at insurance, a trend that's happening, and I'm sure you've probably heard of it, and how this will help us in both retaining and recruiting and retaining, and also our reduction in our march to that Cadillac tax number. I'm going to talk about high deductible health plans. How many people here have heard of a consumer-driven health plan? A few of us. High deductible health plan. How many people have heard of high deductible health plans? Probably everybody's heard of that. Anybody here think they're a good idea? I do, but how many people are going to say that high deductible plans are a good idea? Not very many. Agreed. But as I go forward here, I'll show you that they really are a good idea and how they will benefit all of us and your employees. So my couple of takeaways for this morning. As you hear consumer-driven health plan or account-based health plan, read that. Get used to seeing that information come to you throughout your literature that you read, your internet, your newspapers. You're going to hear more and more of this. What really makes that high deductible plan successful are health savings accounts. Health savings accounts have been around for a while, but they've really picked up steam now in the Affordable Care Act. Health savings accounts are very unique in that most of you are probably familiar with health reimbursement accounts, flexible spending accounts, things like that. They've been around, 125 deduction, it's been around for a long time. Those things have inherent limitations. For instance, you have to spend all of that money in a year. They're talking about extending it a little bit, but as an employee, as a consumer, you have to think, how much are you going to use? You have to use it. If you don't, you lose it. It's your own money going in there. And they have those restrictions. Health savings accounts are very unique beasts. First of all, they're owned by the employee. The district has no say in that health savings account. How much is there, how much goes in, what goes out. From an employer's point of view, from my point of view, that's great. I have no administration there. From an employee's point of view, it's great. If that employee leaves your employment and goes someplace else, that travels with them. There's no cap to how much can go in there. They could put $100,000 in there. They can put $200,000 if they wanted to. The neat thing about these health savings accounts is they're tax-free going in. The earnings are tax-free while you're there, and when you spend it, it's tax-free. Has anybody else got a retirement program out here that does that? Anybody think they have an IRA that you put money in tax-free, it earns tax-free, and you get to spend it tax-free? Doesn't happen. Your Roth, you pay your taxes up front. So this is a very unique tool. So that's the first thing. One, I already mentioned it's tax-free, working on the state on that, federally tax-free. It is a savings program for the future. We're all going to have costs. All of your employees are going to have costs into the future. Even if you have retirement benefits for your employees, they're still going to have to pay a portion of their Medicare costs, Part A, Part B. It's still going to be there. Most of us, probably nobody has in their retirement plans, includes dental, vision, things like that. This is a way for employees to do that. And as I said, once you get a certain balance, it's like a money market fund. You can invest in stocks, bonds, real estate trusts. It's very flexible. So it's a great tool. Employee owns it. It's his money, her money, tax-free. It's a savings for the future. What does it mean to you? It's an opportunity for us to continue to provide a very high level of coverage for our employees. Basically what it is, at the JPIA, we have an account-based health plan. The kicker about the HSA, it has to be tied to a high deductible plan. That's why I said high deductible plans are a good thing. You can't have your normal PPO program, your normal HMO with a $200 deductible and $15 copays and have a health savings account. Has to be tied to a high deductible plan. At the JPIA, our high deductible plans are, no coincidence. For a single employee, I said it's about $8,500 for a single employee. If you get into the account-based health plan, it's $7,000. There's a $1,500 spread. What a coincidence. That's the amount of the deductible. So generally what we're doing, what I'm seeing agencies do, is helping employees fund their health savings account. If you're going to save $1,500 for each employee each year, and they currently have a $200 deductible, why not put $1,300 into a health savings account for them? The employee is whole. They have the PPO program, which right now I have to tell you, our PPO program just doesn't exist anywhere else anymore. It's a very good, very high valued product. It has very low deductibles, has very low co-pays, has an immense doctor network. So it's a very good program. So employees could move to that program. For the employee, those young invincibles, my 26-year-old son, how much health is he going to use in a year? Probably not much. So I just gave him $1,300. If he doesn't go to the doctor that year, he's up $1,300. He makes one doctor visit and gets a $20 or $50 prescription. He's out $150. He still has over $1,000 in that account. That encourages him to hopefully make better health care. For you as the district, before you were paying $8,500, now you're paying $8,300. So you just put $200 in the district's pocket for each one of your single employees. Let's say you have a program where the employee is paying a portion of their premiums. Maybe you pay all of theirs and they pay their family, or everybody has to kick in $100 a month, whatever that number is. As an employee, I would rather take my $100 a month, put it into a health savings account, have access to this great network. I'm not out anything. I'm still whole here, but if I don't use it, I get to save it. And I can save it and spend it tax-free. So it's a great vehicle. You're going to see about it. In the private industry, it's coming on like storm. Those of you that are looking, Director Dwayne, where are you? Never mind then. Somebody who's in the private, who's got a health plan not related to a public agency? Have they talked about high deductible plans?
Actually, it's appropriate. Caltech JPL, retired, and I work part-time for them still. But they just went into this. In fact, we just had a redesign, they call it, and it's exactly what you're describing. And I was suspicious about some of it because it sounded like this business, you use it or lose it, but they
Yes.
explained that. It all hasn't flushed out yet, but they've got some very good, they have 3 good PPOs, Ed Kaiser, traditionally we've had.
Yeah.
It seems to be settling out, but that's exactly what they're doing because it was running wild. I mean, the Institute can't afford to have this thing escalate.
And we all know as we look at our budgets, I mean, if you take water, the power to move your water, and your payroll out of your operating budgets, what's the next highest item in your operating budget? I'd be willing to bet for everybody here, it's going to be your employee benefits. And how do we get a handle on this? So this is a way to do that. And you're right, and that's going to bring me to another point. It's this education, and I'll come back to that because that's one of the important pieces there. Yes, ma'am.
You know, the irony of all this was first being proposed in 1992,
That's right.
and most people were not willing to listen.
They heard high deductible and said no. That's right. Yeah, health savings accounts have been around for a while. I will tell you another little piece of information here, HMOs. Probably all of us offer HMOs to our employees. HMOs came really on strong in the late 80s, was what was considered a very good idea, worked very well for a while. HMOs, I believe, have two fatal flaws to them, and I would not be surprised if we don't see HMOs by 2025, maybe sooner, because they're going to just price themselves out of the market. HMOs have 2 flaws. One, HMOs, they pay capitation. So they pay that doctor, whether you show up or not, they pay him a fee. They pay that doctor, him, her, that group a fee, whether you show up or not. In insurance, paying for something you're not using, that's an expensive way to go. That's tough. The second thing about HMOs is they have what we call, adverse risk selection. Generally, and I know this is a very generalization, but generally people who expect to use their health benefits during the year, maybe they have a chronic condition, they know something's coming up, a pregnancy or some event, they go to an HMO, they gravitate to HMOs because their out-of-pocket costs are capped. They know where they're at in that. They have, once their commitment is in, they're there. Yes, HMOs have very limited networks. Yes, HMOs provide just only certain benefits, but your costs are fixed. So generally, those people that use more of that benefit gravitate to HMOs. So that's the second issue. The more costly users, I don't want to say sick, but the more costly users go to HMOs and they pay capitation. HMOs are the fastest rising cost of any program. Those of you that in the JPIA, you see it there. Those of you at PERS, same thing. You're seeing it. It's the fastest growing program. All HMOs, I would tell you, will reach that Cadillac tax threshold probably before 2018. We subsidized ours this year by $1 million to keep that rate growth down around 7.5%. If it wasn't that, if we didn't subsidize it, it'd have been a 10% growth rate. That's what's happening in HMOs. So that's my little ditty about HMOs. If you are offering it to your employees and you're paying that 100%, or you maybe ask them to kick in a small portion, be aware of that in your budgets. That HMO, that cost is rising faster than any of the other programs. With that said, back to the health savings accounts. As I said, that health savings account then is very flexible. You can put in $1,500, you could put in $1,300, you can put in $200. It's whatever your district wants to do with that. What is your funding level for your health benefits for your employees? This allows you that flexibility to do it. Right now, if an employee is kicking in $100 a month, that $100 a month is gone. If they don't use health care in that year, it's gone. It's out of their paycheck. It's gone. If they put it to a health savings account and they don't use it, it's theirs. The other neat thing about a health savings account, It has very high limits each year. A family can put in, I want to say, $6,550. So if you had a family deductible of $3,000, instead of putting another $3,000 into an IRA, I would tell you put that $3,000 into your health savings account. Go ahead and fully fund it. It's tax-free in, it's tax-free earnings, and tax-free out. So it's another unique vehicle there to do that. So there's flexibility to the employer. It gives you a chance to still offer great benefits to your employees. And if you're going to ask them to put in a share of that, this gives them a chance to save that money. And in the event that they do have a major event sometime, and it has a very low out-of-pocket. Currently, our plan for a $1,500 deductible has a $2,500 out-of-pocket. So if the district is helping put in money there, we've reduced their out-of-pocket exposure. If they didn't have it this year and they put money in their health savings account and then something comes up, they don't have to tap into their family budget for this. It's already in that savings account and they get to buy that tax-free. So it is a very good thing. It's flexible and it reduces your future rate increases. So I know that this is kind of hard here, but if you think about it, if that single employee right now, you're paying $8,500 a year, if that goes up 10% next year, you're now going to spend another $850 per employee next year if it goes up 10%. But if you had that high deductible plan in a health savings account, and let's say you did you paid $7,000 and put in $1,300, next year's increase at 10% is only $700 because it's only based on the premium portion. You don't pay inflation increases on the contribution to the health savings contribution amount. I know that's kind of an odd thing, but it slows your march down to that Cadillac tax threshold. So my point here, if nothing else today, and I'll come back to this, is look at these things. That last bullet, engagement and accountability, that's what I would call that fundamental shift we're seeing in healthcare in this country. We're going from a situation where I used to buy my insurance, I had my $15 copay, a minimal deductible, I didn't care. I go to the doctor, he said, you need amoxicillin. I bought amoxicillin for my kid and went home, happy camper, I paid $15 for it. I didn't ask him if it was the generic brand. I didn't ask him if there was another alternative to it. For $15, I didn't care. The insurance company doesn't want that. This industry, which is billions of dollars, doesn't want you to just walk away with, I don't care. They want you to ask that doctor, is there a cheaper version of that amoxicillin? Can I get that MRI someplace else? They want you to be a consumer, to look for the best value. And they're going to do that financially. So, as I tried to point out earlier, 90%, 50% plus of all private industry now offers a high deductible health plan tied to a health savings account. 20% it's mandatory. I was in with AGRIP, Association of California Government Risk Pools. It's a national association of JPAs back in Wisconsin. On the East Coast, public entities are almost all offering it now and going to that plan. It's coming this way, and it's coming to you. So I'd tell you one thing, start now. When you see something about consumer-driven health plan, oh, that Andy character, he mentioned that. What was that about? Read it again. Start passing it out to your employees. The real kicker here is you have to start that education now. If you wait until open enrollment 2017 and say, oh my God, we're going to have the Cadillac tax and it's going to cost us this much money, everybody needs to think about this account-based health plan, this consumer-driven health plan, it's too late. They're going to hear high deductible, you're going to scare them away. Those of you that have bargaining units, start that now. Don't negotiate for something past 2017 because you don't know how that Cadillac tax is going to hit you. There will be some form of tax. You don't know how it's going to hit you, so don't bargain out into 18 and beyond because you may be dealing with results that you did not anticipate to have there. Start that education early. Those of you at the JPIA, I have staff going out into the field all the time. I was over at Region 5. I was down at San Diego. I will come to your board and your senior officers and talk to you about these plans. I have staff members that will talk to your staff about it. You need to start that education now because people are afraid of it, right? High deductible plan. Your bargaining units, your unions, they're the first one to scream. Oh no, we're not going to let you get us that high deductible plan. That costs us money. Well, here's a way that you can do, and both of them. And believe it or not, I really say this is the win for, This is the win for the employees, and it's a win for the districts. It's a way for us to give our employees quality health care at a rate that's, somewhat affordable. And we certainly slow down the rate of increase in that program. And it is coming. By 2018, probably 90% of all insurance done in this country is going to be through some sort of high deductible plan. Because it makes you, the consumer, ask, is there a cheaper way to do that? Right now, we're looking at a product called Castlight. It will show up, and most likely will do it. CalPERS already has this product, for those of you in CalPERS. Maybe you have not heard of it, maybe you have. But literally, it's an app on your cell phone where an employee, they're at the doctor's office, and the doctor says, yeah, your son needs amoxicillin for that earache. Well, okay, and you push amoxicillin in there, and it'll show you and you decide, 12-mile radius, 2-mile radius, 25-mile radius, what's the cheapest price for that amoxicillin, and the difference between the name brand and the generic. Amoxicillin's a perfect example. The generic brand of amoxicillin, about $15. The name brand, $85. So if you have a health savings account, which one are you going to get? You're going to get the $15 one. Absolutely. MRIs. I slide into second base goofy, and the doctor says I need an MRI on my shoulder. I type that into my phone, and he tells me to go over here to his buddy, right next door, great guy, they do great service there. Well, it turns out the cost of that MRI, and this is still in-network, so in-network means that's what Anthem has negotiated with the doctors. There's a range what they'll pay for an MRI. Currently, that range at Anthem, $1,585 down to $350. So that buddy next door, he's going to charge $1,585 for that MRI. Well, at a $15 copay, I didn't care. But now if it's my money, and I can see, can't I go right over here to this guy? He's got ratings. This app shows you their Yelp ratings, other user ratings. He's got very high ratings. He only is going to charge me $500. What's the doctor going to say? I don't care. Just bring it back to me. I want to see it. So that's what this whole consumer-driven health plan is about. That's what technology is doing for us today. It's literally on your cell phone, on your computer, on your iPad or tablets, whatever you want to be, and it will allow you to shop. Now, are you going to go shop for a heart replacement, major surgery? No, you're not going to try and negotiate that there. But what you can do on this thing, you can see what the medical rating is for that hospital. What's their ratings for return visits, i.e. infection, cleanliness, things like that. What was the general overall feeling? There'll be a rating there for that. So maybe you want to go to this doctor, but maybe you want to go over there. The other thing is maybe you want to use your orthopedic surgeon. He could do it in two different places, this hospital or this hospital, but this hospital is going to cost you overall $1,000, $1,500 less than this one. And they have a higher rating. That's the type of power that's going to show up that we get to use as consumers. So that's why you're going to see these programs being promoted going forward here. I know I've talked a lot about this now. Like I said, the takeaways, educate. You have to start early. It's like you said, you just got exposed to it here recently and you're still thinking about it. I introduced it to my employees last year. I had about a 25% uptake on it. And I have professionals in the office for them to talk to. But everybody's going, oh, no, I don't know, high deductible, I don't. So now this year they've heard the results of those of us had it last year, and they're going, hey, yeah, I want into that. I would tell you, those of you that offer Kaiser, it's a no-brainer. Your employees make money in the deal. Because at Kaiser right now, if you go to Kaiser, you got a doctor visit, you pay your $15, you got $5 or $10 for the prescription. Every time you go, you pay $15 or $10, whatever that copay is, plus your prescription costs. Just happens. up to $1,500, and then you no longer have any out-of-pocket. Well, at Kaiser, when you get that high deductible plan, it's exactly $1,500 less than the other program. And so now, after I pay my $1,500, which came in through my health savings account, I no longer have that $15 and $5 copay. So in essence, I got no payments this year because my $1,500 was paid through my health savings account, which was funded by the employer. The employer broke even. What do they care, right? As me as an employer, whether I pay $8,500 or $7,000 and put $1,500 in, I'm still ahead in the game. So for your Kaiser people, it's a no-brainer currently. Kaiser is Kaiser. Kaiser's an interesting beast. I say HMOs. I'm not counting Kaiser in that. If you think about it, look at Kaiser's model. They're the insurance and the medical provider all in one. They've cut Alliant out of that. They've cut Blue Shield out of that. They've cut WellPoint out of all of that. Kaiser was on the brink 15 years ago and really got after their model. And while I'm not trying to promote Kaiser or anything, but one of the interesting things about Kaiser, one of the big issues in the medical field is drug interactions. When you taking one drug and then another doctor prescribes another, and maybe a different one provides that, or you're mixing it with an over-a-counter, that drug interaction, that's an expensive cost. Kaiser's is like, the rest of the world has like a 43% interaction rate. Kaiser's is like 12 or less. Why is that? Because every one of their drugs goes through their computer system. Every single one. And that algorithm that they have that looks for those potential conflicts, second to none. They did an excellent job there. So it's just an interesting tidbit in Kaiser. Health benefits, over almost 30% of the total cost of health benefits now is in pharmacy, about 28%. That's where that's at right now. So that's why you're seeing things at the JPIA. We instituted mandatory mail order, and we're in part of the employer group waiver plan for our retirees. They are a little more cumbersome, but those were almost $1 million a year savings in each one of those programs for us to do that. The PPO program right now costs about $78 to $80 million a year to run. So if I can pick up $2 million by changing some policies, and once again, what does it mean? More interaction on the employee's part. The user has to be a little more proactive there. But those are the type of savings that are out there to do that. So you're going to see more and more of that. Yes, sir.
You drive this thing towards cost and minimizing costs. I'd like to hear the other side of it, the quality. All of us probably in this room have our favorite doctor.
Mm-hmm.
I've been going to my doctor and that group for 30 years. They're good. They have good recommendations. They know what they're doing. In fact, my doctor quit Kaiser when he came out of school because he didn't like the way they operated. So this bouncing around, just shopping like first thing you walk in and you get 40 pages of forms to fill out.
Absolutely.
You have to go put it in the computer. That's all expense. That's nonsense.
Agreed.
That needs to get fixed. And these drug companies,
yeah, I know.
The $84,000 thing, for the hepatitis C.
Yeah.
That's a crime.
Agreed. Well, I'll answer that in two ways. You're absolutely right. The nice thing about the JPIA program is it's tied to our PPO program. So it's the largest network out there. So how do you reduce the cost of a program? PPO, HMO, how do you do that? You start restricting the network available for you to use. They negotiate with certain doctors, and that's what happens to you then. That area of doctors, you used to use Cedars-Sinai, but in your new network, they couldn't negotiate a cheaper rate with Cedars-Sinai, so they no longer offer that. So now you got to pay out-of-network fees if you do that. So in our case, it's tied to our PPO. It's the largest network out there. If you're in our PPO program or our HMO program and you move to this account-based health plan, all of the same doctors are there and more. So yes, that's when I say it's a chance for us to still provide a very high quality of care and network with minimal interruption to the member through these coverages, but we have to start thinking of creative ways to do that. The health savings account is a way to do that. You talked an interesting point about, oh God, you got how many forms you have to fill out. You know this Castlight product I was talking about? One of the things you do is once you load that information in there, you electronically feed it to the next doctor, if that's what you want to do. So that will help things. It's if it works. Yes, sir.
I worked for Kaiser permanently for 18 years. I have their coverage. Their goal is preventative health care. They want you to come in at least once a year, maybe twice a year, to see if you're smoking, to see if you're overweight, to see if you're exercising enough, to see what drugs you're taking. They have everything online. Everything is computerized. Their goal is to keep you out of the hospital because the hospital is the most expensive part of
By far.
every healthcare program.
By far.
And that's why they concentrate on making sure the patient, the patient takes care of themselves. I mean, they're the largest HMO in California. The other big one is across the country, Cleveland Clinic, and the big one in Pennsylvania. They all operate the same way.
Right.
So any other program that has a high deductible and the patient is left on their own, to me is the big disadvantage. The patient has to be encouraged to go periodically to get examined to see if you're overweight and all these other conditions. I think just like any business, you want to operate efficiently. They have per capita, like you said, with the doctors. They negotiate that rate every year. The doctor doesn't get paid more if he sees you more or spends more time with you. He'll spend whatever time he has to. I mean, I've been with, actually even before I worked with him, we belonged to Kaiser because we felt it was very comprehensive.
I agree. Kaiser is a very good program, and he's absolutely right. You know diabetes, cholesterol, hypertension, obesity, overweight. Those four things. Peter Kaczynski has a great saying. Peter, many of you know Peter. He's one of our risk consultants, works in this area in San Diego. He says, you know what, Andy? I can lower your automobile accidents by 75% if you just let me take reverse out of everybody's vehicle. If I can take reverse out of every one of their vehicles, I can lower your automobile accidents by 75%. Well, the same thing here. If everybody would watch, if you have hypertension and you take your medication, if you have high cholesterol and you take your medication, if you watch those big signs, we could lower our costs 75%. That's where it's at. So here's an interesting analogy. Smoking. We see less smoking going on now. I could say there's two things that have led to that. A huge education at the primary school level. I mean, they have been hammering these young kids for a long time. And the other one is, how much is a pack of cigarettes today? Go try and buy a pack of Marlboros for anything less than $6.50. You probably can't do it. And $5.50 are taxes. A lot of people had to quit smoking because it was too expensive. Healthcare may be going down that same path. If you make it too expensive to not watch your weight, to not watch your hypertension, to not watch your diabetes, that might be the way that we have to do that. She raised her hand first, sorry.
To me, the real advantage, and I was a proponent of this back in 1992, when I was in business in Anaheim, is that when the individual has the responsibility and sees their own account, and when you're paying it yourself, because your high deductible might be $1,000, it might be $2,000 a year, I think you're much more sensitive then to your own survival and to your own self. Because when you have to write the check each year, it's your money.
Yeah.
And it's when you personally are not paying, you really don't pay attention.
That's true,
It takes away the personal initiative to take care of yourself when somebody else is paying the bill.
Agreed. I think you're absolutely on point on there.
One other issue that came up at Caltech, which was a big driver, we have retirees, they move out of the state, and the networks weren't available to either Kaiser or our PPOs, and so they had to change and redesign it so people that moved to Colorado, for example, after they retired, get coverage.
Right.
Have you faced this issue?
We do, and the Anthem network is huge. That's why we're still with Anthem, and that issue, that cross-state moving, that's fairly well resolved. But once again, you move to a very rural area, you have less options.
We had Anthem, and they don't have it anymore.
Yeah, Anthem is expensive, but it has a huge network. Did you have a question? Time? Oh, sorry.
Yeah. I think, we're looking at two different sides of the coin. You look out at your audience here, and they're all older, like they're talking about the retirees.
Uh-huh.
Their perspective is real. They don't want these big deductibles, by and large, because they live with the current problems. Now you're talking to me about employees, and you're talking about a younger, skewed population, and you're saying from a point of view of a carrier, like an insurance carrier, who do you want? I want those younger people.
Absolutely.
So there's the issue. The issue is, who are we insuring? Are we insuring ourselves? That's a different perspective from insuring the young people. And that's the argument that's going back and forth in this room.
Agreed. And the one thing I should clarify here is, and at the JPIA, the account-based health plan is merely an option. I allow my employees to pick and choose if they want to use that or not. So I would say the same thing to you. Are you going to save a lot of money in the short time? First of all, if you're enrolled into Medicare A or B, you can't have a health savings account, period. So you're not going to do away with your regular PPO programs, your Kaiser programs. Those are always going to exist. What I would say to you, though, in that regard is, going back to my risk management, my enterprise risk management, we have this group of people that are retiring. We have to deal with that. But the long-range concern, got to get those people in here. And this account-based health plan may be another way to help attract and retain some of that talent. I know we're getting close here, so got another question? Yeah.
Just a suggestion. Eli Lilly.
Mm-hmm.
Indianapolis went this approach, 10 or 15, maybe 20 years ago. They might be a good model to look at to see what kind of results they had, because they in fact converted all of their health plans to individual savings accounts, to HSAs.
Right.
And had all their employees go there. And it might be someplace for people to do research to see whether or not, how has it worked out, because that company has had experience over a long number of years.
I know that's true, sorry. That's true. And our own brokers, Alliant, who is the broker for our health benefit program, all of their employees, that's all they offer, is a high deductible plan with a health savings account. Same thing with Aon on the liability and property side. So it's there. Again, all I could tell you, start your education now, start looking at it now. I'm volunteering me and my staff to help you with that, as long as you're in our program. Currently, PERS does not offer a high deductible plan. For those of you in PERS, it's on their radar. If it does show up in the next year or so and you want to stay with PERS, I don't know why you would, but if you wanted to stay with PERS, look into that process. Yes, sir.
Do you have all this cost-benefit analysis flyers where we can actually get in touch with JPIA and get them to send it to us?
Yes, I could give you that. I think by contacting the JPIA, the first thing I'd want to ask you is, what's your current plan? Because everybody in this room probably does it a little bit differently. Do they pay 10%? Do you pay for everything? Do you have a flat rate? Once I get that, I can make those flyers for you. But it doesn't make sense for me to try and come up with an option for a 10% contribution versus 15 versus a flat $100 or a flat $200. So if you contact us, my staff will then create that information for you. I can give you the basic information that's available now.
It would be nice if you had a flyer like that and maybe just had a factor, and so that any of us that have our employees kicking in a certain percentage, well, that can vary amongst the agencies. So if you had that where you could just factor that in,
Okay. Be a good place to start. Thank you. That's a good idea.
Do you have another subject beyond that?
No, I'm done. Yeah, no, I'm done. So.
It sounds like, or looks like, the questioning could go on forever. You raised a lot of good points, and I know that a lot of general managers and board members are going to be taking a closer look at the
the HSA and certainly a better understanding of the inverse condemnation issue. So thanks for coming down from Sacramento. We appreciate it. And again, thank
You read your flyer there. Thank you.
In the absence of anything else to come before WACO, meeting adjourned.